What's a secret you'll take to your grave, but you'll share with Reddit because you need to get it off your chest? My mom tried to kill me twice. First was around 10 or 11 when she strangled me with my school jumper, avoided that by running her into a wall and hightailing it to a friend's place. Second was around 14 or 15 when she used a box cutter to try and stab me in the chest. I managed to use a pizza box as a chest protector. I tried telling my grandmother about all this and she refused to listen, so till my dying day, this will be between me and Reddit. When I was just like 11, I think I was extremely suicidal. I don't even know, there was nothing that indicated I should have been. I, being young, didn't know this wasn't the usual experience and often talked about it to just get shrugged off by my classmates and told that I didn't know what I was talking about. One day I went outside to my garden. There's a relatively large hill there and a pile of pointy and raged rocks there. Looking back on it, I probably wouldn't have died, but was much more likely to get serious injuries. Anyway, I was at the top and about to jump when I heard my dog whinging. It was in that moment I knew I couldn't just end it. I now have an extremely strong bond with that dog, and after that I stopped talking to most of my classmates. I think about it a lot and what might have happened if my dog wasn't there, but in any case I'm glad she was, and I'm glad I didn't ruin the rest of my life at such a young age. I haven't dared told my parents as my dad lost his father to suicide, and I don't want them to worry more than they already do. I was in a friends with benefits kind of situation with someone I didn't know super well a few months back, and she got off to the fact that a younger guy was into an older woman. I was 24 at the time, and she was 40, and I mean, so was I love MILFs, and she was right up my alley. But one day she stops talking to me out of nowhere, and I find out that it's because she went to jail. Previously, she had told me she used to have a minor drug problem, which I was sympathetic towards because my mom did too, so I knew she was meeting with lawyers or parole people or whoever, and I was surprised she had relapsed because she seemed to be doing so well. Nope, turns out she had raped her 14-year-old son and was just in my area awaiting trial or something, and she was so into our age difference because she was a pedophile and was using me as a kind of substitute. I was shocked and disgusted when I found out, but it made some of the things she said when we had sex make more sense. I had no idea and probably should have talked about it with someone, but I just felt like trying to forget it would work, and for the most part it has, but I'll still never tell anyone I know personally. My dad committed suicide a few days before my birthday in October. The last conversation I had with him was about how I thought his shitty ex cheated on him. My mental health isn't the greatest, so I've convinced myself over the last 7 months that it's my fault. I regret that that was the last conversation we had. Over his dumb fucking ex. There was no suicide note or anything. I miss him every second of every day and I stare at his urn just sitting there. The last time I spoke with my mother, I didn't really speak at all. I was 13 years old and had been spending the years at the hospital as she did chemotherapy, radiation, laser surgery, etc. to fight her spreading lymphoma. I was a stupid kid and was frustrated with having to be at the hospital every day after school. We were in the hospital room and I was annoyed that I couldn't be at home in my room calling my friends. No cell phones yet, or whatever the hell I was concerned with. When we were eventually leaving that day, I was a giant asshole and wouldn't give her a hug and just said something like, "I just want to go home." The next day she was in a coma and never recovered from it. And the last time I got to hug her, her body was cold and was no longer alive. That will haunt me until the day I die. I moved back into my parents' house after I got fired when I turned 24. I was there about a month and every single day my dad would somehow get mad at something I would do and it would escalate to him threatening to fight me. About a month in, I exploded. I hit him in the mouth with a right hand and a left hook behind it, and that was it. I felt really guilty because he was bleeding everywhere out of his mouth and quickly played the victim. I even tried to get him a paper towel and he looked at it and spit blood at me which got all over the walls. I feel really scared for my mom. There's been times where he's choked her to the point of passing out, beat the crap out of her several times when I was a kid and subsequently spent 15 months in state jail because of it. He's a master manipulator and my mom keeps trying to reach out to me to put the blame on a new medication that he started. I'm not hearing it. My whole life he's been an extremely violent narcissist. I told him when I got kicked out that he'd never see me or talk to me again, and I promised that would be the case. I'm done. I have schizophrenia. An uncle I've never met has it too, so I guess it's hereditary. My doctors don't know, and I'll never tell them, because I'm afraid of being treated like a schizophrenic. I attempted suicide at age 15, and in the aftermath at the hospital they made me fill out a bunch of questionnaires. One was a schizophrenia inventory. I had heard of schizophrenia, but I didn't know what it was, and I was really surprised to find out that the symptoms they described weren't normal, and that I was answering most of the questions in the affirmative. However, they just ended up diagnosing me with major depressive disorder and never asked me about any of the schizophrenia symptoms. For years, I thought maybe that meant that the schizophrenia inventory stuff wasn't a cause for concern. Like perhaps those things can happen in an extremely severe case of depression. I now realize that they probably never even looked at it. I have 2 master's degrees. I can tell what's real and what's not, so I do my best to ignore the hallucinations. I thought that the way I hear voices in my head was the way everyone's brain is. Then I learned that, well, it's normal to have an inner monologue of your own voice. It's not normal for there to be other voices that you don't attribute to yourself butting in. Like, I really thought that that was just how thinking worked. I've struggled with toxic shame since I was a teen. Made an innocent mistake. Embarrassing. Took a much needed day to rest instead of working my ass off as planned. I must be lazy. Let someone down, even an impossible work goal. I'm the disappointment. I hate myself. I hate myself. I hate myself. These words mutter out of my mouth several times a day, without thinking. The end result? I'll procrastinate the hell out of my life. Not pay an important bill, sit at work all day browsing time-wasting factoids, chores piling up at home, missed opportunities that I'll think about later, but that doesn't work when I'd rather not think at all. I would literally rather do anything than think about the subject I'm ashamed of. It's not ADHD, it's that every mistake triggers fight or flight, and flight always wins. Applies to old mistakes too, so my oldest procrastination habits are the strongest ones. Didn't want to face problems then, don't want to deal with them now. Starting to see a therapist who's reminding me that fucking up means I'm human, and that expecting to be anything more than that isn't all it's cracked up to be. Best of all, I'm breaking out of my procrastination periods faster by leaning into the embarrassment and going, yeah, I fucked that up, sorry about that. Yeah, I'm 3 weeks behind, but I'm dealing with it now, best deal I can offer. Take it or leave it. I still have bad days or even weeks, but at least it's not months anymore. If any of this rings a bell, look up toxic shame online. YouTube's been a good resource for me there. I anonymously reported my childhood best friend to CPS. She was in a horribly abusive relationship and her daughter was being affected by it. From my friend being forced to live in a house with a hoarder and not allowed to clean anything. We're talking not able to get the front door open and rotting food everywhere. The worst was when her boyfriend in a drunken rage shoved her and that was in my friend's arms. The poor little baby was only a month old and was super lucky my friend took the brunt of the fall. Which left my friend with a concussion and 7 staples to the back of her head. Her boyfriend baby dad locking her out of the house while her 2-month-old baby screamed for hours inside. While boyfriend riles her he would never allow my friend to see their daughter again. All while he ignored the baby screaming. My friend had raw hands from pounding on the front door. She finally got in the house by climbing a drain pipe to a 2nd-story window. She left him for 2 weeks after this, but it didn't stick. After all this and more my friend still refused to leave and beloved her boyfriend loved her. So I called CPS and they showed up and told her that she had to leave or she would lose her daughter. It was the kick in the ass she needed to leave and not go back. This was 4 years ago and both my friend and her daughter are doing great. While her ex is serving a 10-year prison sentence for beating and hospitalizing the girlfriend that came after my friend. I would do it all over again to save my friend's daughter. She is the sweetest girl and deserves to live in a safe home. I thought I was dying the other day. It might have been a heart attack. I had been neglecting my house. My dishes were beyond disgusting. There was clutter everywhere. Not trying to throw a pity party, but my fiancé broke up with me recently and I went through a pretty painful physical situation and was just a lazy depressed sack of shit. It occurred to me while I considered calling an ambulance that if I died, someone would have to clean this up. They would associate my death with this disgusting stuff. Obviously if I did die, someone's gotta come do something with my stuff. But to add filthy dishes and clutter in, too. That's not something I want to have anyone connect with me. It feels rude. I live alone and I am out in the country. I think it would take days before anyone checked. So I cleaned. I hustled and started with the dishes. At one point I could feel my heart fighting. Hard to describe, but something was fucked up. So I scrubbed faster to get it done before I died. Really racing the clock. Finish the dishes before you die, you fucker. I figured, if I'm found on the kitchen floor with a broken plate around me and gloves on my hands, at least they'll know I was trying to make it better. Finally finished those and kept going. My heart hurt and I was having trouble breathing and I was really scared. I finished cleaning and was in tears. I wrote out who should get what, the gun safe code, and some goodbye messages, and that I just sensed that I was dying. I had made sure to put the cat out so she wouldn't be trapped inside and have to eat my body to survive. I laid on the kitchen floor so that my rotting body wouldn't ruin the carpet, and I waited. I finally fell asleep, exhausted. I'm gonna go get my heart checked on soon. I'm only 38, never smoked, but who knows? Shit happens. But what I did was stupid. I'm a loved member of my community. I didn't call 911. I just accepted that I might die, and my only problem was that my house was disgusting. That's fucked up, and I'm still trying to figure out why I didn't try to get medical help. I'm pretty sure my dad killed my mom. The official version is that she committed suicide and my dad found her body. She definitely wanted to die, but I think he helped her with that and didn't tell anyone. I found my mother's living will and other medical records, updated shortly before her death, signed by my father and her. I also found out that the two had previously discussed euthanasia. It's illegal in Germany, but they could have gone to a neighboring country for it. However, the prerequisite for euthanasia there was that the entire family, so not just my father, but also my siblings and I, had to be involved. My mother didn't want that. She didn't want to talk to us about it, let alone be part of it. She couldn't bear that thought. It's been 3.5 years since her death and I haven't spoken to my father about it. I knew it would hurt him to admit that. He's really uncomfortable with talking about anything involving emotions. But it broke my heart to think that he would spend the rest of his life feeling guilty towards my siblings and me for doing this behind our backs. So I once told him that I wished she hadn't had to do this on her own. That I wished someone had been with her and maybe even helped her. He didn't answer, but he hugged me and let out what seemed to be the biggest sigh of relief I've ever heard from him. He seemed lighter. I hope he feels that way, too. I won't tell my siblings. I don't want them to be more hurt by all of this and then get angry at my father. Well, that was hard to write but also kind of liberating. Thanks to anyone for reading. Have a good day. I had a cat that got very sick. The vet told me it was some kind of virus that animals can get from eating the poop of other animals. I was to give my cat a pill once a day, but it was just about impossible to get him to swallow. I wrestled with him and tried so hard, but it usually ended with him pissing on me and spitting the pill back out. He started hiding from me all the time, which was heartbreaking. My cat was sick and getting worse, and I couldn't even pet him or sit next to him because he was scared of me now. I came home and he was in a corner, motionless but eyes open and rapidly breathing. I said his name and touched him, but he was completely unresponsive. I picked him up and turned his face to mine, but his eyes didn't move or seem to focus on anything. I thought he must have been in shock or in such terrible pain. I carried him to the bathroom, wrapped him up completely inside a towel and held him there until he stopped breathing. He didn't struggle at all and it only took a minute, then he was gone. I felt and still feel that I did the right thing for him. But I never told anyone. I met a man online who said he was 14 when I was 13. I went to meet him at a local hotel that he told me his brother had booked. I met this brother who during awkward discussions told me he was 28 and that we had to enter the hotel separately, drugged me and raped me repeatedly throughout the night. I left when he went to shower and basically forgot all about it. My brain just pretended the event didn't exist. I began having nightmares 4 or so years later which lead to the floodgates opening. I was piecing together the event and realizing all the red flags I'd missed. The self-victim blaming was horrendous. I felt so stupid so I tried to out on paracetamol. I remember I vomited and passed out on the bathroom floor. When I woke up I was so utterly embarrassed that I had failed to end my own life that I cleaned up and showered and forgot about that too. It all resurfaced a second time in 2020 as a combo alongside horrific work conditions and family drama, so I ended up hospitalized because I tried to out again. This was more serious as I'd used Condian and I stupidly caused damage to my liver and kidneys according to the doctors. Nobody knows the full event really. I say really because I was supposed to stay at a friend's house as cover, but she told her mother who drove me home and said she was gonna call the house to make sure I was there. My parents were at a BBQ at 9 p.m. I said I was going to bed and left to meet him. My dad also vaguely knew I was talking to someone inappropriately BC he could read my MSN chats and had sent a message to this person threatening them if they came near me. But nobody knows the full event that I actually went through and I can't tell anyone that other than Reddit. One time in high school I stole this giant turtle statue from a random yard and put it in my grandma's as a joke. It was around the time the gnome was traveling the world. Well, turned out that the old lady was my grandma's free enemy, and when she came over and saw her stolen turtle, she wanted answers. Well, my grandma's answer if it just showed up did not satisfy her, and they got into a huge fight about it. The other old lady died a few years ago. I feel bad I never told her that my grandma didn't steal the turtle. I did. My father will never know that I intercepted his hospital bill from his truck crash, so he won't live a life of debt and went into a very small, manageable loan to pay it off as I had previously saved up a considerable amount over time. He retired after the water he was hauling shifted over an embankment, workers' comp, and unemployment fucked him over. He couldn't work. But he would need to in order to remedy that loan. He was in no shape to have a hard job at 65 and with horrible joint back problems. I'm still paying off the loan 2 years later, but at least my father isn't grinding himself to bone and has not driving truck anymore. He spends most times at home, watching TV and enjoying his part-time mall cop gig at a dead mall, where he can just get a little exercise in. I was lost in high school, struggling with mental illness and home problems. Because of this I performed really poorly and couldn't graduate my senior year. I skipped over 50% of my classes. The next school year I was redoing classes I had failed but in booklet computer form. It took about a month. When I handed my teacher my exam booklets, he gave me a passing mark on each without even looking at them. He told me I was brilliant but handed an unfortunate set of cards. That he knew how smart I was but I just wasn't present to show it. I'm really happy that I was able to get my full diploma instead of GED, and it's all because of him. I'll never tell anyone. In my last year of high school there was this kid that just outright hated me. He was a football player and one of those types that drives a truck and always wears camo everything for some reason. So as I'm walking home from school him and a buddy drive up to me and proceed to obliterate me with a paintball gun. It hurt so bad, man. A few days later I managed to get my hands on a baseball bat and ambushed him in the parking lot. I hit him pretty hard in the back and laid into him while he was face down. I smashed his hands pretty bad and then ran off into the woods, shitting my pants with fear. Never got caught, somehow. I kept my mouth shut and nobody else said much either. Things kinda blew over-ish. I learned later that I did some permanent damage and he couldn't play football anymore, which messed up his college plans or something. I regret doing it, honestly. When I came back from my third deployment to Iraq in 2007, I wasn't me. Really barely me now. I felt like I was alone, like I had nobody with me, even though I had a wife and kids and family back home who always cared about me. I felt really numb and had no one to talk to or anyone I wanted to talk to. I needed to feel, so I went to massage parlors, Backpage, met random women off Craigslist. It even went as far as doing something every Friday to try and feel something. It didn't work. So I bought a $1,400 Bulldog, Rip Semper, and a nice truck I couldn't afford. Constantly spending money to feel better but still felt empty. Here I am 15 years later and barely feel my kids help, but I feel I've messed them up too much to actually connect to them. Sometimes I feel like getting in the car and driving somewhere far away, but that would hurt my family financially. Sometimes I wish I didn't make it back so they could have taken the life insurance and had a decent life. I hope someday I can get somewhat back to normal. I spent my 20s climbing mountains. Alpine mountaineering, rock climbing. Sport, trad, alpine, and waterfall ice. I got to be pretty good at it, even climbed the biggest mountain in the Canadian Rockies. I don't like climbing and I didn't enjoy it. I hated it. I wasn't reckless most of the time, but I had 3 very close calls. One of my best friends died on a mountain. Growing up, my dad was convinced that I was weak, helpless and stupid. No matter what I did. He was terrified of losing me and thought he was protecting me every time he stopped me from accomplishing something, saying, "You can't do that, you don't know what you're doing, you'll die," or when he couldn't stop me. "I'm surprised you're alive." I've never told him. Or anyone that I spent a decade doing something that I hate, trying to prove to him that I'm not what he thinks I am. How his attempts to keep me safe drove me to very nearly get myself killed. I don't think that I ever will. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, please drop a like, and to stay up to date with my latest videos, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel by clicking the button under this video.